What's up, everybody? I got Dr. Chris Sano. I am PG Braun, and this is Unfinished Business. And we're going to get into some fun, right? Some speed round action today.
Speed round.
Let's see what we got. We've gotten very serious the past couple episodes. We wanted to start you guys off strong now that we have our official title.
Yeah, I don't want to have bags in my eyes from crying the last two episodes. All right, so I want to get into this. PJ, you posted a picture of you at 280 fucking pounds.
Yes.
Let's talk about the life at 280, because a friend of mine used to know Greg Kovacs. Mm-hmm. What was he, 4?
He was in the 4s, 420.
Like he couldn't wipe his ass.
Enormous. Yeah, he carried a little fan around with him.
And he could have had to do the floss with the towel.
Yep.
Like, so what we take for granted is at 280, life changes, little things. So I want to know, like, the little things in life where you're like, you hear tying your shoes, you wear sandals and shit. But so at 280, tell me, how that felt like. What were the things that were actually difficult that maybe someone else takes for granted when you hit 280? Well, how tall are you, by the way? 5'8"?
I am 5. I've actually gotten a little shorter as I've gotten older, so I'm 5'10". But I was always teetered between 5'10 and a half and 5'11".
Right.
So we'll call it 5'10".
At 280.
Yeah.
So explain. I don't want to know like but like the food, the amount. Like, were you just miserable? Like, how'd you feel?
Miserable for sure. Now here's the thing. I had this number in my head, which was silly. My 280 was my first goal of really 300 was what I wanted. Now. Ed Connors, who is a legend in the industry, he is the man who started Gold's Gym. Him and Joe Gold started Gold's Gym. Joe Gold had the name. He was building the gym. Ed Connors was an architect, brilliant man, who said, really? I can turn this into something big. And that's how it all started. And Ed Connors, I'm not going to throw numbers around, but they eventually sold Gold's Gym, the chain, for quite a lot of money. But you wouldn't know it because it doesn't act, better than anybody. But he was one of the guys that was a big influence in me early in my career, and everybody will say that about Ed Connors. He's flown Flex Lewis, myself, all of us around to meet each other when we were young bodybuilders, and I thank him for all his insight over the years. He told me that there was many bodybuilders who were we had this quest to be 300 pounds, right? Yeah. It was very common. And he said, there is no magic in 300 unless you're a bowler. And I thought that was such a funny statement.
Very good, yeah.
And we just wanted to be 300. So 280 was the first goal because let me tell you, I was eating so fucking much.
So like, what we're talking, Palumbo had his shakes, the Palumbo shake.
Yeah.
Like what were you drinking things?
I had my bronze shakes. So
what was the bronze shake?
This was my day. I'm gonna walk you through my day. Yeah. You're gonna be disgusted by the end of this day.
That's what we want.
Now this is the hardest part about it is eating this every day. All right, so. I'm also going to state that to get this much food in, you have to be taking insulin. There's just no way you can do it without insulin.
And real quick, guys, I just want to see what PJ just said. Like, you're hearing the whole story.
Yeah.
Because now, like, when they post people in their 10,000 calorie days, like, and they're eating ice creams and Oreos, like, you got to understand there's a shitload of insulin going on.
Yeah. You can't get all those carbs in without the insulin.
And train the same day.
No. It was just too much.
Doing legs, vertical leg press. Like Juan, I'm like, how did he eat all that and do vertical leg press?
Juan has a stomach of iron, though. He'd be like, I got to eat a pint of ice cream before we train. I don't know how. And Juan shout out to Juan. Juan, instead of eating like chicken and rice, he would eat chicken parmesan.
Hey.
So he would have all that dairy and all that acid sitting in there. He just has a strong stomach, man.
I think his body produced a lactose enzyme because the amount of gallons of dairy.
Gallons.
Yeah.
I can't even really handle dairy anymore, but I know you guys want to hear about what I was eating. So this was my day. So meal 1, and this was at 10 units.
Where did you start? Because, 280, that time you hit 280, you were coming from what? What was your, you know what I mean? Like, because that was your biggest, so you were ramping up from.
Yeah, so I had tortured myself to make 225 shredded.
Okay.
And I was really, really shredded in the low 230s, and I was like, I got to keep coming down because I'm just not big enough. Back then, that's what we used to do. It was much different back then.
Right.
Like most of the heavyweights now, a lot of them are not, they're not 225 peeled. Maybe they're 215, maybe they're 217. Back then, the super heavyweights were guys that were really tall, and they were just, abnormally big. So you were going to come down. If you were under 6 feet, no matter how jacked you are, you were going to find a way to make that heavyweight class. So we were really, really torturing ourselves with diuretics and stuff to make the weight. So I wanted to grow so much that I didn't have to do that anymore. I wanted to be a true super heavyweight, right? So after the 225,
What show was that? What show?
I believe that was after North Americans, perhaps,
Okay,
2009.
So you're looking at July, like end of summer.
Yeah. I was like, I'm going to go hard. So I did my my post-show rebound, and I got into the 250s. And then I did a very, very aggressive cycle. At the time, this was the most aggressive cycle I'd ever done. I did, and it's funny because the things that I'm going to say are aggressive, which were very aggressive to me, I think in many ways are quite common nowadays. So I decided that I was going to do 500 milligrams of testosterone cypionate 3 times a week, right? So that's 1,500 milligrams of test a week. I also decided that I was going to do 100 milligrams of trenbolone acetate every other day. And I was also going to do a 50 milligram Anadrol before I trained every day with my, which I now know is fake, growth hormone, which was my Chinese, the blue tops back then. And I was doing 5 units of GH at the time.
You split them or you did it at one time?
I did it all at one time. Okay. Back then I used to do it in the morning. And I was doing my insulin. So my insulin was 3 times a day. I was doing 10 units.
Fast acting?
Of Novolog, yep, 3 times a day. Breakfast, pre-workout, post-workout. So this is how my day went. So that was my cycle. And that cycle took me from 263, pretty lean, up to, I was at 279 for a while. And I was like, why can't I just get this 80? And I'll never forget the day that I got on the scale and I was 280. I was so happy. It was very short-lived.
Remember those the scales at Publix? If you guys don't have Publix, they're on the south east. I used to, like, before I got on the scale, I used to go to the water fountain and drink water to kind of like just get a little bit, half a pound if I can.
For me, though, I was so, and guys, people will get this. I was so meticulous that the only time that I would weigh myself would be in the morning. I would pee, and then I would poop, and then I would make sure I had no clothes on, and then I would get on the scale. That was my only weight. That was my real fucking weight.
Not the post-gym.
Nope. I don't want to know any of that shit. I wouldn't even look. I was so crazy back then, I wouldn't even look. I'd stand backwards. So I would start my day. Now, this is the life of a bodybuilder, man. This is the life of a bodybuilder when you read the stories about, like, and it's funny because back then this is cool to me, and back now I look at it like, what the fuck? So I'm waking up around 8 o'clock, right? And I'm not eating breakfast until about 9. I'm going to tell you why. So I would wake up and I would do 30 minutes of fasted incline walking. And the reason that I did this is because it stimulated me to want to eat. Otherwise, there's no way I could get this breakfast down. So my breakfast was 1 pound of red potatoes that I would slice up thin and make into my own home fries with 8-ounce steak. And I would also have 2 whole eggs with it, right? So a pound of fucking potatoes. A pound of fucking potatoes. That's 16 ounces of potatoes,
and
right?
then 8 ounces of beef.
8 ounces of beef, 2 whole eggs.
So you're like a pound and a half of food right there.
Yeah. That was how I started my day. Now, after that meal, took my insulin with that meal. So after that meal, what I had to do was just to make sure. Now, usually that was enough. The way that guys back then would want to really master how they utilized insulin is the average person's going to need about 10 grams of carbs per unit of insulin. Some people might say 8, some people might say 12, but the average is going to be 10. So if you're at 10, you're kind of hitting what I think is the safe zone. I always wanted to have a little bit more than that. So my next meal after that was, and a lot of people didn't like this product because it was kind of a byproduct of all the good stuff, but Species used to have waxy maize, right? So I would have, my next meal was 2 scoops of whey, and I would have it in 100 grams of carbs from waxy maize, and I would put 1 tablespoon of Dave's macadamia oil in there.
I love that macadamia oil.
Yep.
Still do.
I got a good deal on it, I think is the real story, but nobody knows. I got a whole deal on it. I got tons of it. But my third meal, you have to understand, I was eating like this every day. You can imagine trying to train after this. So these meals were only 2 hours apart, right? So now after that breakfast with all those potatoes and the steak and everything, I had to lay on the couch, watch Sports Center. That was my thing. Then I would chug that drink, go back to the couch. Now, a lot of times I made the drinks in advance just because I would have them in the fridge. I just didn't even want to be bothered with it at that point in my life. So I would go back to the couch till about noon. And then I would get up and I'd start preparing my next meal. So my next meal was 2 cups of white rice, and I would have usually 8 ounces of red meat into the white rice. All right, so that's meal 3. Then meal 4 would be my going to the gym meal. So my meal 4 this was a very important one because I wouldn't have this until I was literally at the gym. Now, doing this on leg day, I had to do it a little bit different because you throw up.
No.
Any other day, no big deal. So let's just say this is a chest day, right? Go to the gym, you get there, you bring your insulin into the fucking bathroom like a junkie, and you go into the
Where'd you hit it? Just belly?
Yeah. And nowadays, guys don't even care. But back then it was different, man.
Yeah.
Back then, we're talking early 2000s and whatnot. It was a lot different. There was signs all over the locker rooms like no steroids allowed, things like that. And so you go into the locker room, you do your insulin. Now, what I used to do was I used to have I was a big fan of Carbolin, right? The original Carbolin, the Art Atwood Carbolin. So I would do 100 grams of Carbolin, and I would actually mix it with just 1 scoop of whey isolate, but I would also throw a bunch of BCAAs in there. So about 20 grams of BCAAs, and I would go right into my workout after that. Then my post-workout, I would do the same shake, but I would mix it with 20 ounces of Gatorade, which is another 30 some odd grams of carbs there. And I would also add in creatine monohydrate, a shitload of glutamine, like 20 grams of glutamine, some pure leucine. And it was clockwork for me. I paid very close attention to my body that at 70 minutes, I would go hypo. So based on how the day was, if I was hungry enough, I would eat before an hour. If I just couldn't eat because I was so bloated, I would actually wait till that 70-minute mark, but I knew I could not go more than 70 minutes. Otherwise, I'd start crashing really bad, and you don't want to feel that way. You feel like shit.
Horrible.
Like that. So
weak and sweaty, yeah.
So now we're at, if you think about it, that's essentially meal 5, right? Because those shakes still count.
Of course.
Those shakes still count. There's a lot of carbs and calories in there. So the next meal was key. This is the key to getting over 280. This is what I had to do.
This is the post workout meal.
Yes.
The one after that.
And this is real talk, and a lot of bodybuilders do stuff like this, whether they say they do it, they don't. It was either Wendy's or McDonald's. So when I went to Wendy's, it was a classic triple with a couple large fries. Or if I went to McDonald's, I used to have a field day at McDonald's. I love McDonald's. So I used to make what I called the McBronsters. So you go to the dollar menu, right? And for $5, this is bodybuilding on a budget because we were broke back then. You get 2 McDoubles and 2 McChickens, right? So you're only at $4 right there. Then with the other $1, you can get yourself some fries. So you take the bottoms of each one off and you combine them. So you've got the McChicken top and crispy chicken with then the 2 burger patties and the bottom bun. That's a McBronster. Now there's something called the McGangbang, which is different. The McBronster I think is better because the McGangbang you actually put the bun in there. And to me, like, you don't want all that extra bread. You're just trying to get all the good stuff in the middle. So, and now back in the day, you used to be pretty public about this. And on the MD forums, there were guys that were like, oh, I had the McBronster today. I took my kids to get it. We all loved it. And this is going back, 15 years ago. So anyone listening to this, the McBronster is still really good. I actually had Marissa try one recently. So, and now at this point, you're feeling pretty gross. You're feeling pretty disgusting. But if you want to get to 280, you got to put more weight on. Now, if I couldn't go straight to McDonald's, whatever, that day, I would go home and I would often make a box of macaroni and cheese and about 12 ounces of ground beef, and I would just mix it all together, kind of just like bootleg hamburger helper. Then I still had 2 more meals that I had to get in me no matter what. So my next meal was either chicken or steak. I always liked in the off season to eat a lot of red meat. But sometimes you grill up a lot of chicken, you got extra chicken. So I'd have about 8 ounces of chicken in 2 cups of rice, and I would add in another 1 or 2 tablespoons of macadamia oil just to get the extra fat and calories in there. And then before bed, I had my poop shake is what I called it. But when I was really trying to push the weight, I often added more. I'll tell you what I used to do. So I used to do 3 scoops of whey isolate. And I also used to put 3 heaping tablespoons of all natural peanut or almond butter in there. I would do a tablespoon of fiber. Dave had his Fiberlize. I like sugar-free Metamucil. Then I would put glutamine and other things that I felt were important for my body in there. And I would blend this all up with almond milk and with ice. And I would drink that as I was going to bed. Now, when I was really, really struggling, that 279, I was having a hard time cracking that, right? There's 2 things that I used to do. Number 1, I used to snack somehow in between on either Evan got me hooked on these Nature's Valley granola bars. Yeah. You know, the little green Nature's Valley.
Yeah, the green ones.
He'd be like, just eat them when you're in the car, just extra calories. And if it wasn't that, I used to have, there was random fruit that I would eat, just a couple bananas, an apple, things like that, just to get the extra calories in. And when I was really, really stubborn, that drink that I just told you went into a blender with a pint of vanilla ice cream. And going to bed like that, man, you're waking up in the morning, and first of all, you're taking the nastiest dump ever. But you're sleeping heavy when you do that. And that's how I had to eat to get to the 280.
And how long were you up there?
Let me tell you, if I missed a meal, I'd lose 4 pounds.
Oh, I bet.
It was ridiculous.
So what do you think the calories were per day?
Oh, man.
8, around 8?
If you do the math,
because the McDonald's is 1,000.
if you do the math, you have to have. This is what Palumbo has also said. You have to have the McDonald's, things like that, to get those really calorically dense meals. Because what I used to eat at McDonald's actually was around 2,000 calories.
Right.
So a couple of McDonald's sandwiches, you're already at 1,000 calories. But to eat clean like that, it's next to impossible to do it, to get those crazy calories in. I mean, you can eat a lot clean, but think about this. I got guys that tell me that they have a hard time eating a cup of oatmeal in the morning, right? A cup of oatmeal is 50 grams of carbs. You know, you're only at 200 calories. So I had guys telling me that they were eating 2 cups of oatmeal in the morning. Now, I can eat a cup of oatmeal, no problem. 2 cups is a lot of goddamn food.
Heavy.
Now, I could do a shitload of cream of rice because it digests easy and there's no gluten in it, right? But still, you got a long ways to go to get those calories in if you're not doing McDonald's and things like that. You almost have to do it. And so to eat like that, all you can really do is train and sit around. Freaking doing anything else was, I would get winded going up the stairs. Finding clothes that fit was really like almost impossible. Having sex, so you're also usually pretty horny because all this is testosterone and shit you're on too, right? So at that weight, you're like waking up. I'm not even saying it for the sake of the story. Like you wake up, it's like 4 o'clock in the morning and you're like ragingly horny. A lot of times you just flip over and just start jerking off because you don't know what else to do. But sex at that weight is tough because you can't be on top for that long because your arms are burning. Your arms and delts are burning so hard from supporting the weight. So you're either going to be doggy style, so you can kind of lean on them, or she's riding you because she's got to do the work because you're so heavy. And it is an exhausting, and it's honestly a pretty miserable life. And I've had other buddies that said the same thing. They hated eating. You get to a point where you hate eating because your life revolves around eating. It's a lot.
And the very hard part to balance there is you want to get that McDonald's type food in, but too much, then it makes you full and you don't even get your calories. Like, let's say, well, I'll do my macros, I'll just eat junk, but you have too many junk meals, then you're stuffed.
Yep.
You can't, and then you wind up not getting the calories. So you get that one in there, but if you go overboard, I don't even know how you got your appetite up.
Man, it was really hard. And a lot of guys used to say that they smoked weed, but I couldn't smoke weed.
It's disgusting, yeah.
I
mean, if you do, that's your
no.
choice.
I remember
I hate it.
Victor Martinez was big on like he had to smoke to eat. You know what I mean? But for me, all it did was make me paranoid. The last thing I wanted to do was eat. And there was like certain things you could do to like produce like extra ghrelin and things like that would help you like. Now I'll tell you what was very important was digestive enzymes. You had to eat.
Which one did you do? Well, enzymes or?
So back then, I used to. Just as far as basic stuff goes, I used to chew chewable papayas.
Well, are they good, man? They're like Pez.
Dude, I was chewing those things like candy all day long. Now, the best that I still swear by this day, and I got nothing out of this, by the way, and they're a great brand, is Now Nutrition. Orange bottles, you guys have seen them. They've been around forever. But they make a product called Super Enzymes, right? And there's a bunch of things in there. Bromelain, you got the papain in there, and your
lipase and all that.
Lipase, amylase, protease. There is ox bile. There's just a great profile. And I'm telling you, I doubled the dose and took that shit with every meal. And, back then, we didn't have things like glycolog to shuttle those carbs. Now, we were using insulin. I never liked metformin back then.
Horrible. It just didn't feel good.
So it was tough, dude. Eating was the full-time job. It was the hardest part about it.
So how long did you sustain that for?
Not very long. So
did you then diet down for a show after that? Or?
So I hit 280 and I was there for a very short period of time, and I kept going back down to 279, which was pissing me off. And I'm so true to myself that, you'll hear bodybuilders like throw numbers around, right?
Yeah, they fluff it. Yeah.
I've never been like that. I can't do it. I cannot tell a lie. I'm like fucking George Washington. If I was 279 and a half, that's what I was telling you, And so once I started dieting, this is funny, because this was my final year working with Dave. And Dave put you on keto right away.
Boom.
So the first 2 weeks, I'm not going to exaggerate because I'm sure you can.
We just know.
Well, how much would you guess that I lost?
I'm going to say 30 pounds. I'll tell you why, because you take the carbs away, all that water, and then your metabolism was so damn high, I'd say 30 pounds. No, I'm sorry. I'll do 20, because I think you lose 5-6 pounds the first 3 days.
So I lost 25 pounds.
Yeah. It's just, boom.
I lost 25 pounds. For starters, I felt so light.
Yeah, dude. How many gallons? That's 3 gallons. No, 4 gallons of water.
Now, here's the funny thing. I felt so light,
no, it's
right?
3. Yeah.
I felt so light. And then I felt instantly depressed.
Yeah, all that work.
And I'm not too much bigger than I would have been. All that work.
Because you were hard at that, man. That picture, you got veins through your triceps and stuff. That was no joke.
I was so bummed out. So I'm like, you're telling me that I did all that, and I'm already down to 255s. And I'm like, so in my head, I was like, I am going to be 240 on stage, shredded.
When you were at 280, you're like, I'm going to be peeled.
That's the plan.
240.
And so now I'm already at 255, and I'm like, all right, well, let's see what's going to happen between now and then to still accomplish this 240, which obviously didn't happen. Now, I will say there's a guest pose online, everybody has seen it, of me and Juan Morel, 4 weeks out, guest posing, and I was 244 in that picture. So I was quality. I wasn't stage ready, but had I had done things a little bit differently, I think it could have been 240. I had to keep coming down from there. Now, I definitely should not have come. You saw that video. I should not have come down from 244 to 225. That was a little crazy.
That was a little bit much for 4 weeks.
The good old Diazide days, but I will never do it again because I will tell you that year was the most cardio I ever had to do, and it was the most T3. And to be quite honest with you, like as my career went on, I used less and less T3. Now I love T3. I hate Clen, but when you understand how to use your thyroid production the right way, it's actually your best friend because you can manipulate how much more you can eat.
So what do you do differently with T? Well, two questions. Well, let's do the T3 question first. So, like, how would you use the T3 that would in a smart way, like how you did it?
So the way that you have to do it on a ketogenic diet is that
that's right.
You have to keep increasing it because you're not. First of all, you're not producing necessary enzymes that your body needs anyway. You're also not manipulating your insulin at all. And so because of that, your thyroid production changes. It starts to slow down. So you actually have to kind of step your thyroid along the way. Now, when you don't do that, see, right after this, I went into the next phase of my career, which was a lot more balanced and with some cycling of carbs. Now, when you learn how to cycle the carbs the right way, you could utilize the T3 for periods of eating more, not eating less. Because if you're eating less and you're taking the T3, you're going to lose muscle. You're going to get flat. And I found that it helped me eat more. And when you're eating more and you're training harder, you're still going to be burning the calories. You're just going to look a lot different than if you're just starving everything off.
Yeah, you get that.
And then really towards the end of my career, most of my athletes that I worked with never used T3. And I hate Clen. I hate Clen. Now, do I like T3? Yes.
Yeah.
But you don't need that much of it. You talk to some of these big guys, I'll tell you right now, and names are irrelevant, but you guys know I know everybody. And they'll even tell you, they're like, oh man, I split them in half and I'll do like 12.5 here, 12.5 here. They're not eating, these guys that tell me they're on 150 mcgs of T3 and shit like that. It's fucking nuts.
No.
That's nuts to me.
What is your take on this is just bro science? Well, you hit 280. How long do you think someone needs to stay at that weight for it to quote unquote stick?
So that's
what's the theory on sticking?
So the bro science theory on sticking is actually it's pretty accurate because obviously weight is water, right? Mm-hmm. And we are all water anyway. So like when you see somebody that's 225 and then you see them at 215, they may look a lot different or they may look, close to the same. They're just at that point, the amount of water their muscles are holding might be a lot different because, sarcoplasm is a lot different than just, excess water that's underneath your skin. Mm-hmm. So when you hit a weight and your body starts getting used to that weight, that sticking weight, right? That is when I feel that your fascia expands enough to hold that water in and make it a part of your normal everyday life, right? So you could, like right now, I'm probably a good, I don't know, I bet you I must be 7-10 pounds heavier than I was yesterday because I drank a lot of water yesterday, but I also did 3 bags of 1,000 milliliter, lactated ringers. So my body saturated all that up. I've been peeing a lot today, so it's all going to come out. That's not your true weight because you're just holding on to extra water. So I think that for you to hit a weight and really stay there, unfortunately, you got to be there for quite a while. I think that you got to be there for a solid, honestly, 6 months. If you hold it for 3 months, you'd be surprised. Well, maybe you wouldn't be surprised because you've done it up and down before, but you don't take me as the kind of guy that's like gotten like excessively heavy.
No, I just didn't like to get fluffy.
Yeah.
John got me to the point because it just took a lot of fucking work. Mm-hmm. So this last time, I noticed the opposite way, PJ. Like when I dieted down hard in October, and it was just another shoot, another video, and it wound up becoming 7 months before I started gaining weight. So it happens the opposite way. You stay lean for a long damn period of time, a new thermostat, and it's that becomes your new set. Where it's easy to stay harder.
Yeah. Look at Dave Palumbo. He can't. I mean, I'm sure he's not trying anymore.
But 2 meals a day, right?
Dude. He when Dave was first my coach, right?
How much did he weigh then?
He was huge.
Upper 280.
I think he was probably like, we'll call it 260, right?
Because I know he had 3 something, right?
Yeah, and he was not trying, but he was still eating quite a bit. Yeah. He always ate super clean, but he ate around the clock. He was always eating salmon. He was a big salmon guy, brown rice. And I used to see Dave in his stringers and just these little nut hugger shorts that he would wear. And I mean, he would bend over and you could see like the separation in his glutes always, year round. So, I mean, the guy was shredded no matter what. And I think because he had so much muscle and that he had stayed there for so long, obviously his basal metabolic rate changed and his body just got accustomed to being like that. So I am by no means big anymore. You know what I mean? Like I'm a big guy, yes, but I'm not big by bodybuilding standards, but I'm really lean. Like when I take off my shirt,
absolutely.
people are like, "Damn, you're freaking lean." And it's not that I'm trying. I'm not eating enough to get fat, but your body just gets used to that. So now for me to get bigger, I'd have to really eat again. Like I'd have to really eat and start consistently eating around the clock to get that size back again. 280.
Yeah, that's a great way. And so, what were some of the things that were just you did take for granted? So, like, was the shoes? Was it? It's like you said, the sex. Anything else that was
clothes was such a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
The only clothes that would fit. It's a funny story. So, Ed Connors, when he brought me out to California, he wanted to. So, Ed Connors is the reason why that John Cena is John Cena. True story. So, he was actually working the desk at Ed's gym, and he was like training for a show, and he was only like 18 years old, and he looked great. I think he did a show, and then he wanted to go, further with it. Ed told him straight up, he goes, "You just don't have the genetics to be a good pro bodybuilder." And Cena was bummed out, and he goes, "But you're very charismatic, you're smart. Why don't you let me take you to meet Vince McMahon?" And John said, "You really don't think I can make it in bodybuilding?" And he was like, "You just don't have the right structure for it." So he was like, "Yeah, I would like to meet Vince McMahon." Took him to meet Vince McMahon. Vince liked him a lot. The rest is history. He became one of the most famous wrestlers of all time. I bet you he's glad that he made that decision.
Oh, so glad. Right?
And Ed's got some great stories like that, and he actually has all the pictures and documents to like show you, like, you know, here's stuff that people, like fans would kill to see. You know, like, here's Cena at 18, like posing. You know what I mean? He looked good. He was hard. He looked a smaller version of how he looks now.
Yeah.
But it just wasn't a pleasing shape. You know
Right,
what I
right.
mean? But, you know, cool stuff like that. Ed brought me out to Cali, and I went to dinner with some quote-unquote important people. And after dinner, he was like, are those the only jeans that you have? And
The only jeans, you said?
yeah, because they were kind of like beat up.
Yeah.
You know, I said, man, you know how freaking hard it is for me to buy jeans? I go, I bought these jeans at the Big and Tall.
Yeah.
And I just wear the belt really tight.
Essentially.
And he was like, yeah, but, you know, you're trying to represent yourself and you're going to these big, important meetings and events. He's like, you got to look the part a little bit more. And I was like, well, I don't know where to get jeans that fit. And he's like, out here in LA, you can get everything. So he actually took me and got me my first 2 pairs of jeans that were actually nice jeans. And it was Lucky Brand jeans. Lucky Brand made these wide leg jeans that bodybuilders could wear. And they were a little loose and they looked fine. But they weren't like big and tall, you know, cinching the waist in. They were perfect. You know, if you had huge ass legs, they would fit you the right way. I remember Ben Pakulski was out there with me.
Yeah.
He had them.
Jeez.
And so just clothes, man. Clothes was brutal. No matter what you do, you're gonna wear a double X shirt, and the arms are gonna be skin tight. No matter what. No matter what.
I mean, yeah. So at 280, you know, again, one of those things. You know, you have goals to hit these certain things, but a lot of sacrifice, a lot of, you know, most of the times you hear people when they hit those up weights, they're like, it just wasn't worth it.
I mean, I was strong. I had some good numbers in the gym as far as like low rep, heavier stuff. But
So you found strength that way, because sometimes I noticed when I gained a lot of weight, I wasn't strong. I don't know if I just felt crappy all the time. Like, I wasn't very strong. I was almost strong when I was in the beginning stages of dieting, when you got some of that body fat off and everything, the diet's clicking, and that's when my strength would go up. But when I was heavy, I don't know if because I held it around the trunk a lot.
certain exercises I think were a little harder heavy.
Pull-ups.
Yeah, definitely. Deadlifts are trickier when you're heavy.
Yeah.
Squats, actually, my squat went right up because you have that extra like meat in the middle.
Yeah, boom.
And that ass, you get that extra ass weight. But my bench always went way up when I was heavy. When I was my heaviest, I used to work up to 405 and do sets of 10 with 405. And then like just on certain days where I wanted to feel good, I'd throw like 455 on there. Just do one.
Triple. Okay.
You know, just do one just to be like, well, I can still move some weight. And I was always smart about that on the flat bench. But I mean, dumbbells, my gym only went up to 130s. So usually I would do dumbbells second. I mean, we grab the 130s and rep them out all day. Barbell rows too. I could barbell row 405 with decent form, like really, like, you know, where it wasn't looking like a half-ass deadlift. But I think that also trying to move that weight with all that extra weight, one wrong move, you know, you're screwing yourself up long term. Where I don't think if I was that heavy, I would have tried to lift as heavy either. I would have just lifted smarter. So that's another downside to
I'm
it.
thinking about like the injuries you had. You did them in your 20s,
Yeah.
like your shoulders, stuff like that. I'm like, oh my God, he did it in his 20s.
All my bad injuries happened between the age of 19 to, you figure, 27, 28.
Yeah. And then they just degenerated over time.
Well, I had completely ruptured my bicep when I was 19. That was before I even started
What were you doing?
I was powerlifting in contests.
Just like a.
It was a
Over
deadlift.
under?
Yeah. I still got the lift, 550 raw in the 198-pound division, won. And at the time, I was the AAU strongest teenage 198-pound powerlifter in the United States. And so I was proud of that, but that was just like fun for me, you know? That was just stuff that I did with the bodybuilding.
Yeah, so let's. I always like to end it with PJ sex stories. So you got a funny sex story at 280?
280 and sex. So where was I? So 280 and sex, I was. I believe that I was most likely still dating this girl Nicole. She was a great girl. And she loved me big too. And We had a great.
How much did she weigh?
She was jacked. She was the first jacked girl I ever met.
Nice.
And by jacked, she was a figure competitor. You know. Yeah. So picture like Strobo.
Yeah.
But with like another like 20 pounds, but a little bit more off seasoning.
Yeah.
So Yeah.
Yeah. Full.
I would say she was 160-ish.
That's a good weight.
Yeah.
Tall.
She was about 5'8".
Yeah.
That was the first time this turned me on so much. I was at a Powerhouse gym in New York, and I was in Brewster, New York, right on top of the ice arena. And I saw this girl, sexy ass girl. She had that whole New York. She was from the Bronx. She had the whole like vibe. Bunch of guys working out. Just walks over to the squat bar. There's 225 on there, and I'm like, oh, she must not realize that they're
Just right on there.
they're doing that. And I went over, and next thing you know, she just walks it out, and I'm like, oh, this girl's gonna squat 225, and she busts it out for a set of 10. And at that time in my life, now these things are a little bit more common, but at that time in my life, I'd never seen a woman. You barely would see women that would squat a plate, and a woman that was hot, that could squat 225 with great form. I mean, ass to fucking grass, just like they say, and then walk it back in. That was like love at first sight for me. So we had some big, heavy 280-pound sex. Yes. But I'll tell you, 280-pound sex, you're out of breath after. Your freaking forearms are burning so bad from supporting the weight.
Right.
You're burning calories that you don't want to be burning. I had a lot of lounging sex back then.
Yeah.
Put up the pillows.
Yeah.
That's how Big Ronnie used to do it.
Yeah.
I know a girl that dated Big Ron back in the day, and she said, Ronnie, he's the king. He gets his sex in a recliner. And he had this big reclining chair, and the girl would come and just get on top of him and ride him in the chair, and that was it.
Buddy.
Yeah, that's it.
That's good, man. Well, all right, there you go, man. I think that was great. Thank you for sharing that, because it's great to like you got to go in the day in life when you see someone. You got to know all the sacrifice and the work and the not only inconvenience, but just not happy.
No.
I mean, not a like
never again.
You're not looking forward to that next meal.
And the pressure, dude, the psychological pressure. Because in your head, you're like, I have to do all this stuff to be good, to win. Mm-hmm. This goes back to the winning thing.
Yep.
If I don't get these meals in, do you know how many times I would, something I didn't get into, and we won't drag this on, but you know how many times I threw up from having so much food in my stomach, and then either training hard or just having something not sit right with me, or it being really hot, and the next thing you know, like you drink one of those shakes real fast, and you wind up throwing up.
You do that burp throw up.
Yeah, I mean, Palumbo said that he used to do stuff like that all the time too. But I mean, what a miserable way to be.
Yeah. Welcome to bodybuilding. And it's not even bodybuilding. It goes back to that winning at all costs, to be the best, to reach a status of validity.
Yep.
Of what you're doing, dude. That was awesome.
Good.